Good afternoon, algebra students. Today we're going to multiply and divide real numbers. So get out your notebook and write down the title. This is notes for 1.3. All right, in this particular lesson we will have 22 examples. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible so it doesn't take us too long. So let's get started. All right, multiplying and dividing rules. So first we'll go through the rules for multiplying and dividing. If the signs are the same, so write that down. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive. So if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. So a positive times a negative times a negative, all of those are positive. And if you divide positive by positive, you get a positive. Negative by a negative is a positive. So anytime the signs are the same, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, so if the signs are different, then the answer will be negative. So this summarizes it right here. Positive times a negative, negative. Same if they're reversed. Positive divided by a negative, negative. Same if they're reversed. So make sure the rules are in your notes. Let's work some examples now. Okay, first we'll start off with multiplying. I want you to write these 6 examples down. If you already know how to do this, write these examples down, work the problem, pause this while you work that, and then just check your answers. And I'm going to throw the answers up. All right, 5 times 2 is positive 10. Number 2, negative times a negative makes a positive, so you get 20. Number 3, the signs are different. Positive times a negative, so you get a negative. Number 4, signs are different, so you get a negative 32. And then remember on fractions that whenever you have a whole number, you put a 1 there, and then learn to cross reduce because that's very important. So 3/8 times 24, divide this by 8, divide that by 8, you get a 3, then multiply the top and you get a 9. Over on number 6, please try cross reducing. It's very important that you do that. Divide by 4, you get 1. Divide by 4, you get 2. Divide by 3, you get 1. Divide by 3, you get 5. So your answer would be 1/10. All right, let's move on. Now in these examples, the next 4, we have 3 different factors that we multiply together. So remember, you can do these in order. So you would take 1/4 times a negative 16 over 1, cross reduce, dividing by 4, you get a negative 4 here. So now I have a negative 4 here times a negative 3, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So the answer is 12. On number 8, you can see that you have a negative 3 times a negative 2, that makes a positive 6, and then a 6 times a negative 7 makes a negative 42. And you should be able to see a pattern as you go through these. If you have an even number of negative signs, so if you have an even number of negative signs, your answer will be positive. So your answer is positive. And if you have an odd number of negative signs, when you're multiplying multiple factors, an odd number of negative signs, then your answer will be negative. So you want to get that in your notes as well. So your answer is negative. So even number of negatives, you get an answer is positive. Odd number, you get negative. All right, let's go to number 9. You want to multiply all of these together. You can do it in any order, but you can see that you have only one negative, and that 1 is an odd number, so you know your answer is going to be negative. So 0.5 times a negative 2x. So 0.5 times a negative 2. 5 times 2 is 10, so you have one decimal place, that's a negative 1, and then you still have an x. And then you're going to multiply that times 6. So a negative 1, so that looks like a negative 1x times 6 would just give me a negative 6x. And number 10, you're going to multiply a negative 1/2 times a positive 2. And you can look and see that you only have one negative here so that you know your answer is going to be a negative. So 1/2, the 2's cancel, so you end up getting a -1 times 3y, and a -1 times a positive would give me a -3y. And your variable just stays in the problem. It doesn't go away. Now we're going to evaluate expressions when x is -3 and y is 1/2. So all I do is substitute. So I take 2x plus y, I substitute -3 for x, and then I'm going to add a 1/2 for y. And I always, when I substitute and I'm evaluating, I put the number that I'm evaluating in parentheses. And you'll see why later it does help us. All right, so all we're going to do is multiply here, do order of operations. You have to multiply first, get a -6 plus 1/2, so it's just -6 plus a positive 1/2. So a -6 plus a positive 1/2 would be a -5.5. So you would subtract and take the sign of the bigger number. Okay, so now let's look at number 12. So you have 3/2 times x, which is a -3, so I'd put that there, minus, and then you have the absolute value of a -y, so a -1/2. Now we do order of operations to solve, so I would just add a 1 there, and I would get -9/2 minus, and then I have the absolute value of a -1/2, which would be 1/2. And now I notice I'm subtracting, so I would do keep, change, change. So I keep the first number, change that to addition, change that to a negative. I end up with a -9/2 plus that would make -10/2, and then I can simplify that by dividing, so I'd get a -5. And that would be my answer. Okay, so now we want to talk about the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse is a quantity which multiplied by the given value equals 1. In other words, if we multiply a number by its reciprocal, or we flip it, then we will get 1. For example, the number 9 is really 9 over 1. And if I multiply that by 1 over 9, I get 9 over 9, which is equal to 1. So the multiplicative inverse of 9 is 1/9. Same with a -5/6. The multiplicative inverse of a -5/6 would be a -6 over 5, because when I multiply that together, I would get 30 over 30, which is also 1. And 1/3, the multiplicative inverse would be 3 over 1. So make sure you have the definition and these examples in your notebook. So the reason we need to know about the multiplicative inverse is because we use that in division. The division rule is that when we divide by a number, it is the same as multiplying by the multiplicative inverse or the reciprocal. Remember this phrase, dividing fractions is as easy as pi. Flip the second and multiply. So for this example, you'd have -16 divided by 4 is the same thing as a -16 times the reciprocal of 4, which is 1/4, which then equals -16 over 4, which is equal to a -4. Same with a -20 divided by a -5/3. You're going to take the -20 and multiply it by the reciprocal, which would be a -3/5. And you'd add a 1, you know how to do this, and you'd cross reduce. Dividing by 5, you'd end up with a -4 times a -3, which is positive 12, because a negative times a negative is a positive. All right, let's look at some more examples. Remember, we have 22 examples. So here are some examples of dividing. So we're going to take 25 and multiply it by the reciprocal of 5, which is 1/5. When I do that, I get 25 divided by 5, basically, which is equal to 5. You know how to do that in your head. All right, number 17, take negative 40, put it over 1. And instead of dividing by 2/3, we're going to multiply by 3/2, and we're going to practice cross-reducing, dividing by 2, getting a negative 20 there, and then multiply across, and you get negative 60. Try it for 18. You should know how to do these. Multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/2. Multiply across, and you get 3/4. And the last one, 1 over 24. Multiply by the reciprocal, which is negative 4 over 1. Then I can cross reduce, dividing by a negative 4. And then when I multiply, I get a negative 1/6. I was looking at that for a minute because of this negative here. So it's really not a negative times a negative, it's still a negative times. So really when I divide, I'm just dividing by 4. I don't know if that makes sense. We can talk about that in class if you have a question. But the answer to that, you have a positive divided by a negative, so it'd be negative. All right, we're almost done. All right, now we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to simplify an expression that includes a numerator and a denominator. So first what we're going to do is we have an example here, 36x minus 24 over 6. You can see you have 2 terms on top and 1 term on the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the expression as 2 separate fractions with the same denominator, and then we're going to simplify. So I'm going to take and rewrite this as 36x over 6 minus 24 over 6. So I use this minus sign in the middle. Now I reduce these fractions, simplify them. So I would get 36 divided by 6 is 6x, and then 24 divided by 6 is 4. So this simplifies as 6x minus 4. All right, let's do 2 examples and we'll be done with this. Okay, so here's an example. So remember, I take the 48y, put it over 8, minus the 32, and put it over 8, and then I simplify. So 48 divided by 8 is 6y minus 4. So that's going to be my answer. Do the same thing with number 22. So I'd take 3x, put that over 2, plus 4, put that over 2, common denominator, and then I'm going to simplify this. So the way you would simplify 3x over 2 is you would actually bring the 3/2 out in front and then put the x next to it. So that's the same thing as 3/2 x plus 2. Okay, we're done. So now review what you've done. Make sure you have all the notes in there, all the examples, 22 examples, and I hope it wasn't too long for you. So we'll talk about any questions that you might have. You might want to write those down for me for class. Thanks for watching.